One more time, infrastructure of AI and Web3, speed, privacy, and ownership. I'm Conrad Shelton. I have been your MC for the day. I think I talked about myself earlier, so I'll hand it over to the panelists as the more interesting set of folks on stage. Let them introduce themselves and their projects.
Hello, I'm Kuleen, part of the squad at the Solana Foundation. I do growth stuff, but these days spending most of my time focused on AI-related stuff. Our mission is to help agents create wealth.
Yeah, I'm Burry. I'm one of the leads of Virtuals Ventures. We're the ecosystem fund of Virtuals Protocol. So we invest in teams that are launching agents on the protocol.
Hi, everyone. I'm Will, founder of Open Trust. We invent a brand new FHE scheme, which is, that's you really say 1,000 my professor, but never mind. Yeah, we help to cue the privacy part for AI agents. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Maybe just to give people a little bit more background on sort of your projects, what is sort of the big problem you're trying to solve right now? Maybe you're on the investment side. What's the most interesting thing that you're looking to invest in?
I can start. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Virtuals Protocol, but it's basically a launchpad for agents with a token. One of the problems that we set out to solve is how to make it easy for anyone to launch an agent and to get started. And the platform is actually no code, so you can actually go there today with as little as 100 virtuals and launch an agent and a token, and then take the wallet that you used to launch the agent to log into the sandbox, and then start to pull in, APIs, have a card for the agent, start to get it to get on X and start, shit posting and whatnot. And it makes it really easy for anyone to launch. But of course, we're really focused, especially my team on the venture side, we're really focused on getting really high quality, very technical teams to come and launch on the platform, use our framework, and then build really cool things. And just briefly to the second question, I think we're looking at a lot of different use cases, but to me, the things that I'm most excited about are consumer type of applications. One that I'm particularly excited about, if people saw it maybe at the main event at one of the booths, is called Byte AI. So it's an agent that you can actually order food on Twitter by tagging the account. So you can say, hey, Byte AI, I want to get a meatball sub or a pepperoni pizza or so, and do the full checkout for me. And it actually checks it out with Coinbase Commerce, and it uses DoorDash driver network to actually do the actual delivery. So those real use cases outside of the crypto sphere is something that I'm particularly excited about.
Thank you.
Yeah, so focus. So we're not a fund, so I won't talk about sort of investment POV as much. In terms of what excites us or excites me, I think if you look at the trajectory for agents, it's sort of increasing their intelligence and capability. So sort of step one of this was giving them access to compute. Whether it was compute during pre-training or increasingly during sort of test time compute with reasoning models, they're just getting much smarter. The second thing is basically giving them access to more relevant data, longer context windows, RAG, people building sort of data pipelines for agents to consume, whether it's social media, data pipelines like Kaido provides or other things. And I think the third thing that's going to be the step change function increase in what agents can do is giving them access to money. Because money is a resource that you can turn into many other outcomes. And so if you think about, okay, how should an agent use money? Actually, something like Solana is a very elegant solution to that. Agents can pay each other very easily. And then as soon as an agent wants to do something that is more complicated or interesting than payments, it wants to fundraise, it wants to borrow money, trade. Actually, there's no better piece of technology than Solana. So we sort of see this future as okay, agents will do more and more, and that'll almost inevitably involve using money. And actually, Solana is quite useful for that. And so a lot of my focus actually is on how do you bridge that gap? What are the things, the bottlenecks for getting agents to safely, reliably, efficiently use money? And I can talk in detail about sort of what I think those bottlenecks are, but I'll leave it there for now.
Awesome. Thank you. Will? No, okay. All right, well, since you offered, Kuleen, maybe you could talk a little bit about what the bottlenecks are. I think that flows well with sort of the challenges of AI agents generally.
Yeah, so there's some that are a little bit out of our control. I think in particular, the agents just need to be smarter. And it's not just smarter, they also need to have for lack of a better term, I'll say memory. Like, because I think if what you want your agent to do is like, hey, tell it to swap this token of that token, agents can do that today, but that's like very uninteresting because what you've done is you basically, instead of me clicking buttons on Phantom Wallet, I'm now typing stuff in some chat interface. It's not clear to me that typing stuff is actually a better experience or like meaningfully different. I think where agents get much more interesting is when they're doing much more complex and sort of longer horizon financial activity. So here's an example I can give that sounds like a little bit far-fetched, but actually a lot of the pieces exist today for an agent to do this. So, let's say you task an agent with like, hey, cure X disease, or at least find me some compounds that are worth doing clinical trials on for X disease. So step one could be you give the agent $10 million. Okay, this is like the amount, this is your budget for this task. And actually, you could even skip that step. You could say, hey, go fundraise for this. Launch a token, market it, get the money. So let's pretend the agent gets $10 million. First thing it does is it pays, let's say $5 million to run simulations. So for whatever disease you pick, it has a starting set of 50,000 compounds. It runs simulations to narrow that set of compounds to maybe 50 that are actually seem promising and worth doing animal trials on. And then the agent can go and basically issue bounties to have labs go run animal trials on those compounds, right? And so actually, if you think about this flow today, agents can have wallets. That's like fairly straightforward and doable. I mean, there's stuff to be made better about that experience, but like you can do that. People have already built pump.science, so you already had an example of launching tokens to fundraise for science. There are bounty platforms that exist, and actually we've been tinkering internally on like having agents issue bounties. So you can sort of have agents do each of these steps. I think as they get more intelligent and they have more memory, they'll be able to just do all of them autonomously. And that is, I think, when things get like particularly crazy. So anyways, okay, that's the example. What are the things that are broken that sort of need to get there? As I mentioned, sort of agents getting smarter and having more memory. Another pretty critical piece of infrastructure is actually evals. So for those of you sort of in the AI world, like every time there's a new model release, the first thing people do is they post on Twitter about like how their new model crushed, X, Y, and Z evals, whether it's like MMLU or SweBench or SweLancer, or pick your thing that you want to do. But the reason this is important is like there's some objective criteria by which we can gauge how effective models are. Today, if you look at the sort of all the agents that get launched in crypto, there's actually no way to tell how one is better than the other than basically like you can gauge how funny you find their shit posting on Twitter, which is fine. Like entertainment is a perfectly good use case, but I think if we want agents to use money, you need a little bit more certainty, and you need a little bit more like objective evaluation. So I actually think one of the things we're working on a lot is like, what are the evaluations that should exist in terms of like measuring agent capability to do stuff on Solana, and then measuring reliability, measuring security. And so that's, I think, another critical piece of infrastructure. The last thing I'll say about evals is there's an interesting trend in the AI world. You release a new eval, and then at first the models will solve 10% of it. And then usually in 12 months, you're at like 80, 90%. So if you give people a competition, they will go solve for it. And so I actually think like a powerful tool for us in the crypto world is like, just go give AI researchers like some tough tasks to crack, and then they'll go do it. So that's another thing we're focused on. The last thing I'll say is like wallet design. Right now, so these LLMs are non-deterministic models. So like you'll give the same input and you will get different outputs each time. That's kind of a scary concept when money is involved. But it's sort of like spell casting. You're like trying to sort of say the right words and get the right output. But that feels like not good enough if you ever imagine an agent dealing with like thousands, tens of thousands, or like hundreds of millions of dollars. So there has to be some kind of mechanism designed around like, what is a secure way for agents to engage with money in which like maybe there's some thresholds under which the agent can execute autonomously, some thresholds over which you actually need human signers. So there's like some multi-sig where like the agent's signing for one of them. I don't exactly know how this gets designed, but I do know that this like reliability security thing is a huge thing that we've got to figure out before agents can like use money in any meaningful way. So anyways, those are a couple of the things I think that need to exist. I mean, and then the last thing I'll mention, and this is just something we focus on every day at sort of in Solana land, is like the money layer just has to be cheap and fast and scalable. And so we're just always working on that.
It's kind of a universal human truth, wanting to be cheap and fast, right? But yeah. But I really like the use case you provided about sort of the decentralized science piece. It's interesting because with my investor hat, I'm immediately thinking like, oh, it has some really interesting nonprofit opportunities, which you might even put all of the data on chain so that researchers who are interested in solving disease might continue to pursue it. I mean, you arguably, though, could set up a for-profit version of this where you'd want to keep all of the data private, still funded in the same way, track that people are meeting certain milestones, but really, I mean, effectively hoard the data. And so maybe as a segue for you and for the rest of the panel, how do you guys think about sort of open data on-chain for AI versus privacy and how to protect that? And I don't want to over-index on decentralized science, but maybe sort of the economic value of data generally.
Thank you. Actually, I also want to echo like you mentioned on above. So basically, I'm sure really seldom people know FHE here, maybe like fully homomorphic encryption. But actually, the only thing you need to bear in mind is actually that's the only cryptography scheme allow you to perform the ciphers computing directly. So that means from the first principle. That's how you can protect your personal data and also interact with your agents, your housekeeper, or the agent for like investing or something. So that's how we spend that's why we spent like 7 or 8 years on this kind of new scheme, find this kind of noise-free FHE scheme. We already got a patent and cooperating with Google in Web2. So right now, I'm thinking it's kind of like a top-down to blockchain because blockchain is much slower than the AI in the real world. So I'm sure we can give more solutions on that part. API, SDK, whatever you can do. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I would just add one thing actually. Like for those who are interested in this sort of topic, there's a good blog piece essay by this guy Dwarkesh Patel, who's like a podcaster, about like the AI firm. And the reason I bring this up is like it's actually kind of difficult to reason about what this future looks like because I think we have this tendency when we think about agents, as we like in our head we think about a human and then we just like replace it with this robot, and this robot's like faster and smarter. But that's actually not exactly right. I mean, okay, this is at least how I used to think about it. Maybe others do or don't. But I get the sense that a lot of people have this sort of default mental model. But the sort of fundamentally different thing about agents is actually that like you can spin up a bunch of them, thousands of them in parallel if you have enough hardware, and then spin them down. So they're like not a human. Like they don't necessarily need to have continuity. You can like have tasks. You can spin up a bunch of them. They do the thing, and then they get spun down. And so you can have AI firms in which you can imagine like the CEO AI, and then it's managing and spinning up and down like engineer AIs or whatever. And my point with all of this is actually that like it's not a given to me that this stuff has to be open. Like you will just run firms in which maybe there's some humans sitting on the board, but like everything is private. And actually, if you think about like where does edge come from for any kind of organizational construct in the future, assuming that the intelligence is like widely accessible either through like an OpenAI API or like, you know, we continue seeing that open source models like DeepSeek actually are like pretty close to frontier level intelligence, or SOTA as they say. The edge then, if like the intelligence is relatively equally accessible, it's just going to be in who has like the more relevant information. So actually, my expectation is like there will be a lot of fighting for private data, and that's actually where you find economic value.
It's, I'm sure my statistic will be slightly out of date, but I think I recall there was some Gartner statistic a few years ago about something like 90% of all enterprise data is off the cloud, locked in private data vaults, right? So they can actually turn in some way to process that instead of having it sit there. Maybe some interesting opportunity to unlock profit for these folks. But yeah, great point. Brie, anything you wanted to add?
No.
No? Good. Maybe, I mean, I think you just made a comment about, and I'll quote Yogi Berra, right? So it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. But given, you know, this is a very open-ended discussion end of the day, trying to make it interesting, how do you see sort of AI and crypto evolving? I mean, particularly in the context of your project. So just open-endedly, and then is there a particular use case that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I can start. I think my view of the future, and I don't know what's the time frame for this, but I think specific to DeFi, DeFi has, as a vertical or application domain, probably the worst UI UX of anything out there, right? Even for crypto natives, sometimes it's hard, right? Like if you get into very esoteric things around like LRTs or vaults and all these things, it's really horrible. And I think people that expect to onboard users onto that are I don't know what they're smoking. So I do think that the future front end for a lot of crypto things, especially DeFi, are going to be agents, and they're not going to be the ones that we see today where you're like just tagging them on Twitter for alpha or an action or anything like that. I think eventually we'll move to, an app on your phone that's basically a microphone that you talk to and that you say, hey, this is the outcome that I want to achieve within certain parameters around time, risk, or whatever. And I think that's truly the future. I think we will move away from browser extension wallets and from having to like deposit liquidity, take it out, et cetera, all these kind of things. And I think we have to onboard people. I just think it's not reasonable to expect that the average person on the street will be able to onboard with like MetaMask or Phantom. And I mean, Phantom is great, but it's great for like crypto people, not for normies, right? So I think that's sort of one thought. And I think there's a lot of really exciting things. I actually think that the application of AI into science is fantastic, and I think that there's a lot of really cool things that you can also do with tokens in terms of like aligning incentives for, say, like people to provide data, people to consume data, et cetera. But my personal view is just more on the consumer side of things, and I think that if we can start to build these agents that run on crypto payment rails that may or may not have a token for some kind of alignment with the users of the agent, but there are actually better versions of consumer things we might have today. I think that's going to be one of the ways that we end up onboarding people into the crypto AI space.
So I think someone on a panel earlier was very, succinct in talking about if we're doing our jobs right, solving real use cases and solving real problems, it shouldn't matter that the product is using blockchain on the back end. Like you really don't even need to know that, right, if it's doing a good job. And so it's definitely something I think about in terms of the high barriers to adoption, right? I think it's the econ term for having to interact with crypto in general.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Well,
Oh my God.
we want to hear what you think, man. You've great points of view.
Because with no offense, I mean, like, first of all, I talked to your team first. I mean, like, we try to co-select some like really awesome like agent or something, but then we start to focus on ourselves because from the like the first principle we should like focus on something like, does the agent, your agent, like, does that really belong to you, man? Because you're using it every day or something, like to buy things, or you're collecting your data, even use them like to help you do the investment or something. Oh my God, I started to think, okay, that freaking out. I cannot use those kind of agents sometimes. So that's why I start to like find those kind. But it's always for fun to find. There's one like agent for like try to find the bugs on the papers about dissertations or whatever, those things. That's really awesome. I mean, like to help to improve. I mean, like the academic and also research part, and really do something on that. That's something I really addicted to, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, actually, my two favorite agents so far to date have been, one's crypto related, which is Truth Terminal, which is like the original Twitter shitposting agent, and actually first agent millionaire in history. So worth following the Twitter account, by the way. It's like kind of deranged, but it's quite funny. The other one is actually just to riff on the scientific research point, deep research. For those of you, I mean, the AI world is really bad at naming stuff, so there's multiple companies that have deep research projects, but whether you use Google's version or OpenAI's, like it's quite remarkable. If you ask good questions, you can get really deep answers back. The last thing I'll say in terms of forward-looking, I think we'll see in the next, I'm just going to make up some time horizon, let's say like next 3 years, an agent that can basically sustain itself. And what I mean by sustain itself is basically self-fund its compute. The compute it needs to exist sort of perpetually. or at least over, let's say, like a 1-year time horizon. So basically the agent, like I'm imagining a scenario in which you basically spin up an agent, you give it, let's say like, I don't know, $10, some amount of money, not enough to pay for compute over any meaningful length of time, and you simply say like, just continue existing for the next 10 years and like figure out how you do it. And then the agent has to go figure out, how do I pay for my compute? Maybe it should post on Twitter, maybe it does something else. But I think that's going to happen, and I suspect it'll be using Solana for paying for its existence and keeping its wealth.
It's sort of I guess an agentic AI version of like the original pitch for Ethereum, right? Like this great virtual machine in the sky, where we've got incentives aligned in such a way that it self-perpetuates. Slightly creepier when it's not a tool, when it's doing it by itself, but maybe there's like some guardrails that you guys are building that'll make it not do creepy things, hopefully.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Okay, I didn't prep you guys for this question, but I hope it won't be traumatizing. I worked in private equity and venture capital for like 10 years. We would regularly talk to market and technical consultants when doing diligence on a project. And so typically at the end of a meeting, which I'm kind of approaching here, I like to ask them, is there some comment that you would like to make that you wish someone had asked that you didn't get the chance to? Something that's been on your mind maybe for today, the conference, after hearing a panelist, and you're like, wow, that's so insightful, but since no one asked me and I really haven't had the chance to share it with anyone. Love to get your guys' thoughts on that. And just to buy you a little bit more time to think about that, after that we'll just do a Q&A from the audience for a few minutes and we'll call it a day.
I can think of one. Yeah, I think maybe not so much a question that someone asked me, but more about people thinking, actually people challenging, because I like to give the idea of Byte AI, and just because I think it's really cool. I met the team, and I think they have amazing plans for building out this product. But what people don't ask enough is like, is that actually better than like just DoorDash or Uber Eats, right? And the reality is that it probably is not significantly better, right? I mean, the only thing I can see today is like, well, if you go to Uber Eats, you have to like scroll through like, okay, what kind of food do I want, and then what restaurant, and then what dish, and all that. And this way, it's more like you've already made the decision what you want to eat, and then you go ahead and order, right? But more kind of thinking about the future and what, this could be like the dial-up version of, of the agent, where it's like, very clunky and rudimentary today, but just imagine what it could be in a couple years' time when, you're not prompting it on Twitter to order you a meatball sub, but again, you're doing it maybe through some kind of app on the phone that looks just like a microphone and nothing else.
Got it. So it's the, think of it as the first reference of what could be done in the real world, not the end state.
Exactly, and I think a lot of what we've seen since, I don't know, was it like last summer when agents started to gain a lot of traction, this is still V0.1, right? And I think what I'm excited is, getting to V1, V2, V3, and so on and so forth.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd build on that a little bit. So I think a lot of the applications I see today, people are basically building text interfaces over like existing applications, and people should really ask themselves, like, is a text interface actually better? And I'd argue in most instances not, because text interface actually, you have to do a bunch of thinking, and you have to like type words and like have a like clearly formed thought. Whereas if you look at the trajectory of consumer applications, it's towards like less thinking and less doing. To where like TikTok is like the zenith of this. You just open it and then you scroll, right? And you don't even choose what you want to consume. It chooses for you. So I think people need to think long and hard about like, okay, is a text-based interface in which I prompt like actually good? In many instances, I think you'll find the answer is no. The other question I'd ask is especially for people building trading-related agents. Is your ultimate value proposition entertainment, or is it making people money? A lot of people, I think, conflate the two and like default expect that their agent will make them money. I used to work in quantitative trading, so I like strong opinions on this, but it seems very unlikely to me that any agents that are publicly available will make money or have alpha in any sustainable way. So my like default thing is like probably your agent will not make people money. And so really what you're doing is you're building an entertainment product. And then if you think about it that way, I think you design these things differently. So anyways, that's those are two things that have come in my mind frequently in the last couple months.
Well, and not to say that entertainment is invaluable, right? I mean,
Entertainment's
it's trillions of
awesome.
dollars, right?
Yeah.
But just it's if everyone's trying to go in and solve, cure cancer with their AI agent versus a more realistic goal in the near term, right? For sure.
I actually think, it's way easier probably to build entertainment-related agents today than utility ones. So, I think it's just like the reality. It's not easy to do either, but entertainment-related ones, I think the bottleneck's much more like creative product design. Utility agents, the bottleneck's actually many other much thornier technical problems.
For sure. Thanks, Kuleen. Will, last one, and then we go to Q&A.
Yeah, I just want to add on some words basically. That's true. I mean, like for utility and or entertainment went today basically. That's also, but still, I mean, I keep on thinking like, oh my God. Actually, that's too much today. Because actually yesterday, like actually it's Cal from Sixth Man. He asked me about like, okay, lots of people doesn't care about like the data or stealing or something, and also like the agent. Okay, how can you use the FHE thing or something like that? I mean, oh my God, I start because I also been this field for a long time. I mean, and also cryptography as well. So I started to think like, okay, what if all the human being being replaced by agent or AI? Because actually, you're using your data, train that model, and I'm sorry, I mean, kind of lost. I mean, but this is whole emotional and those things. But yeah, I'll leave the chance for audience, man.
Yeah, that was great. Well, thank you. Questions from the audience? Anybody? Yeah.
Right now, so students really active on the fast running and also the fast SP and also the modern voting technology execution and so on. So how do you perceive yourself in the next few months about your core status in the physical global market instead of just you have on the side issue?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. One is like I'm not ultra familiar with sort of the technical nuances of SUI, so I will not go into it sort of in substantial depth. A couple observations. One is I think the conjecture I'll make is that it is going to be very difficult for anyone to build any kind of distributed system that is like orders of magnitude faster than Solana. Like I think Solana is already sort of pushing up against just fundamentally physical limits around like the things that slow the network down are actually like the way fiber cabling across the world works. Like there's certain parts of the world that like aren't well connected by fiber cabling to others, and that makes validators in some places slower. And like that's like a very real physical problem. No amount of software solves that. So we have some ideas, but my point is like maybe people will design systems that make sort of marginally different trade-offs and are faster in certain ways. But I would be shocked if anyone builds something that's like meaningfully faster than Solana. With SUI in particular, I think it's specifically better for like one type of thing, which is like uncontested transactions. So if you're like sending transfers and it's not a contested piece of data, so you're not trading, it can be more efficient, which is fine. I'd say though, like the one thing that I think that maybe is like worrying for SUI in that response, or in that, if you sort of play that out, if you look at what actually generates money in crypto, like what are the things people pay fees for? It's not native transfers. Native transfers, people like is a race to the bottom immediately. So like if you want to justify the valuation of like a multi-billion-dollar protocol, you have to ask yourself like, okay, who's paying the fees and like how much are they going to pay? If you expect a lot of your network volume to be just native payments, I think it's a little worrying. And so Solana, on the other hand, is like built to be extremely efficient for contested things especially. And contested things are like trading things. And that's where people actually pay priority fees. So I think there's a question around like, what are the types of activity you're solving for to be most efficient? Solana's made certain decisions to, I think, prioritize the ones that are most economically valuable. But we'll see. And the other thing I'll say is there's something around being stress tested. Like the things that Solana has undergone in the last 4 years, so I've been part of the Solana team for 4 years now, And the things that sort of I have experienced personally and the network experienced are just crazy. If you imagine, if you rewind to like 2 years ago, the network was going down at least for some amount of time every 3-6 months, and now it is not. And now, in fact, it's doing well even on days when literally like the biggest launch in crypto history happened. Right, so I'd argue Trump coin launch is basically the single biggest one-day event in crypto history, and the network crushed it. And so there are things that you learn by like just getting punched in the face, and Solana has learned some of those things, and Sui will have to go through that the hard way. Yeah. So anyways, that's some of the things I would think about with respect to like Solana and Sui.
Good question, and to reinforce slightly, so my most recent venture was for a telecommunications company. Even in Web 2, right? I mean, round-trip latency for a compute function, 90% of it or more is purely network. It has nothing to do with the compute. The compute is fast, right? And they spend a bunch of money fixing that with content delivery networks and edge caching and all these other things. But for Solana to achieve that, quickly, right? Very impressive. Awesome. Other questions? Maybe one more. Anybody? I know, it's the end of the day. All right, let's call it a day. Round of applause, please, for the panelists. Awesome. If you guys will humor me and sit there for 1 second, I have a slide, I think, with our names on it, if folks want to take a picture to remember us by. Oh, we even got an order. Perfect. Nice job. Anybody? Yeah.
Logo, virtual pictures. Actually,
That's so good, actually.
Did AI design that for you guys? That's super smart.
yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, that was good. One more round of applause. Thank you.